Mario Cristobal revealed the top overall performer so far at Miami Hurricanes spring practices. Who is it, and what does it mean for the upcoming season?
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Friday Eve. I am Alex Donno, University of Miami alumnus, co-host of Locked On ACC, and writer for Canes County at Rivals. And thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. On this loaded episode, we'll talk about a workout that happened this week between a former Miami Hurricanes quarterback and a future QB1 at Miami and how that went. We'll talk about the winners from Thursday's spring football practice in the Green Tree Fields and inside the indoor practice facility, including the person Mario Cristobal says is the top performer overall so far this spring. And folks, as you've noticed, I haven't been here for the past several days. It's been like 5 days, but I'm so used to being with you guys every day, sometimes twice a day. 5 days off feels like 5 weeks sometimes. I literally just stepped off a cruise ship, and I've been enjoying the past few hours catching up on what's been happening at Miami, including talking to friends of the show who have been out at practice this week. I'll be out there again on Saturday, and also reading some accounts from others. And something Mario Cristobal said this week that really got my attention. Coach said that starting right guard Anez Cooper has had overall maybe the best spring of any player on the team. Cristobal said about Big Coop, he's noticeable daily. Rep by rep basis has pushed himself really hard. Now, obviously with, 80 plus, there's like 100 guys, including the ones who are walk-ons on the roster. You'd maybe be hard-pressed to kind of guess who the top overall performer is, but I'm really not that surprised that Cristobal has singled out Anez Cooper. Anez has been a stalwart on Miami's offensive line for the past 3 seasons. Big Coop is heading into his 4th and final year at the U, and he has created so much consistency and so much nastiness on the right side of that offensive line, along with CeCe Malinois, who's heading into his 3rd year this year. But I remember, time really flies, because I remember covering Big Coop as a true freshman back in 2022. And he was probably a little underrated and a little under-recruited coming out of high school in Alabama, because I think he was like a high 3-star, but really should have been a 4-star, if not a 5-star looking back on it. But when he arrived at Miami, Coop, he moved really, really well and had a lot of potential and played a lot as a true freshman. But, he came in, I think, 400 pounds plus. And then over the past 3 years, Cooper has chiseled and fortified his body. He's in like the 330 range now. And of course, he does such a great job getting downfield, getting to the next level. And I think a big thing about Big Coop is he sets such a great example for his teammates on both sides of the football. You guys remember, of course, last season, we talked so much, me and all the other members of the media, about how Cam Ward, of course, was the alpha on the team and the leader of the team last year. But I think anytime you got into a conversation with other players in that locker room about who the leaders and who the alphas were, Ward's name always came up, but so did Anez Cooper. Cooper is always someone that gets brought up as a great teammate, a great leader, and a really good trash talker, which I think in this context is great, because you're keeping engaged and, keeping your teammates entertained and motivated during practice. And, we've heard from Big Coop a couple weeks ago when he spoke to the media about, how he's really made sure he's been there for the young offensive linemen, the guys that are heading into their 1st and 2nd seasons, and how, he's really stayed in touch with James Brockermeyer, the new center. Now, Brockermeyer is a transfer senior who has really, and that's another one, by the way. Brockermeyer was another player that Mario Cristobal pointed out is doing a superb job so far, because James learned the calls and learned the plays almost immediately upon arriving at campus. But someone who's going to make sure these guys are keeping caught up with everything is Anez Cooper. He's an absolute leader on and off the field. And, as far as Coop, being the top overall player so far at spring practices, the first thing that tells me is everybody else hears that, right? Whether you're, Ruben Hurricane Bain, who's one of the leaders on this team, you're a freshman looking to make a name for yourself, like Hayden Lowe, who's been practicing really well, JoJo Trader, who's been one of the standouts in practice so far, hearing Big Coop getting that shout out is going to motivate the rest of these guys to step up and be as consistent as Anez is, on the Green Tree Fields. But then the other part of it, what does this mean down the road? I think that this reinforces the fact that Miami is going to have one of the best offensive lines in the country this coming season. The experience you get of having Anez Cooper this year as a senior, of having Cece Maui-Noa, who's one of the most outstanding offensive linemen in the country. That guy's going to be a high draft pick next year. He could come back for another season if he wants to, but probably won't need to, because I think Cece Maui-Noa heading into his junior year is going to end up with a high draft grade next year. We'll see how that goes. The guys on the left side have been working really hard. Markel Bell is someone who you see the progress from when he first got on the field last year when Jalen Rivers was injured. How much Bell, who's 6'8 plus, has improved his technique and become one of the most reliable starting left tackles, in my opinion, out there, certainly in the ACC. And, still have the competition going. By the way, another offensive lineman that gets a lot of praise from Mario Cristobal is Ryan Rodriguez, someone who actually earned a starting job at the beginning of last season, got injured in the Florida game and couldn't come back. Rodriguez might just win that starting left guard job again. And he's got competition on that left side. Matthew McCoy, Tommy Kinsler is someone else who's been doing well in practice, who's competing for multiple spots. But Ryan Rodriguez, Anez Cooper, James Brockermeyer are some of the other offensive linemen that have drawn praise from Mario Cristobal. Miami is unique in the fact that not too many teams around the country, there's a few, but Miami has, unlike most, a former offensive lineman and offensive line coach as their head coach. So it's a very offensive line-driven program. Alex Mirabal, the O-line coach, does a sensational job. That was a mouthful word for me. He does a great job. I'll simplify it, developing players down the road, the way that they did at Oregon and the way that they're now doing at Miami. And, I think Miami has the type of offensive line that can perhaps be on that Joe Moore Award short list. They were mid-season Joe Moore watch list. That's an award given out to an entire offensive line, outstanding offensive line in America. And hopefully Carson Beck, who's going to be Miami's starting quarterback this year, is going to have a clean jersey throughout Miami's schedule. And, Anez Cooper started all 13 games at right guard last year, ACC honorable mention. Hopefully he can keep that going into maybe first team all ACC this coming season. But that's someone who Mario Cristobal said is probably having overall the best spring of any player on the team, and you love to hear that. I mean, we've also seen and heard about what Carson Beck has been up to this week. Seems like he's really close to being cleared to throw, but he's not quite there yet. Cristobal said that he's getting plenty of work, Beck, just not actually slinging the ball yet. We've been seeing, Beck moving around in practice, doing every drill that doesn't involve throwing and, taking handoffs and practicing his footwork and his timing. So once he gets that green light and he's cleared to throw again, we're going to get a much better idea what Miami's getting at the quarterback position. Because obviously, like all of us, we've watched a lot of Georgia the last couple of years because the Dogs are on TV all the time. So we've seen plenty of Carson Beck, a lot of really, really good, some not as good, but very high floor on Beck, what he's done the last couple of years at UGA. And I can't wait to watch him in person, folks, because I remember, last season seeing Cam Ward for the first time, kind of the light bulb goes off and says, okay, this is what a future NFL quarterback looks like, because we haven't had that many of those at Miami in recent years. You're like, yeah, okay, that looks like a guy who's going to be an NFL guy, probably a first-round pick. Cam Ward, by the way, is about to be the number 1 overall pick in April. That seems like a consensus at this point. And Beck is another one who could end up being a high NFL draft pick. So curious to see how he looks when he's actually throwing. In the meantime, of course, we're watching the young, hungry guys. Emory Williams, who's been practicing well. Judd Anderson, who Cristobal said had a really good day, I think Tuesday. Mario said was probably the best day that Judd has had so far in practice. And Luke Nickel, You can see why this guy's a former Gatorade Player of the Year in Georgia, because he flashes that sort of potential. But as a true freshman, you're going to give him time to season and time to develop. But hopefully we see Beck really soon. By the way, more updates on Thursday's practice, who the top performers were. Also, folks, something that maybe I should unretire the Donno balls. I haven't been dropping enough Donno ball predictions recently, but we tried to tell you last week that a player who was getting momentum to land elsewhere more than likely is going to end up being a Miami Hurricane. Steve Wiltfong has flipped a Fong bomb from Clemson to Miami on a certain favorite of ours here on Locked On Canes. We're only getting started, folks. You want to keep it locked right here. You ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending all in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. When I started using Monarch, I realized just how much I was spending on things like food delivery, which really adds up. Now I budget smarter and I save more. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan your long-term goals. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. Folks, we're also proudly brought to you by Game Time. Guys, I use Game Time all the time to get tickets. Imagine watching your favorite team live, feeling the energy of the crowd and witnessing unforgettable moments. There's nothing like experiencing a big game in person. Getting tickets shouldn't be stressful. That's where Game Time comes in. Make it easier than ever to grab last-minute seats at unbelievable prices. Guys, the Game Time Picks feature is a game changer. Their curation makes it easier to find better value for tickets to sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and so much more. They always populate my list with stuff they know I'm interested in. Guys, the lowest price guarantee on Game Time means they will credit you 110% of the difference if you find tickets in the same section and row for less. With seat views before you buy right there in the app, no surprise fees, and a lowest price guarantee, you can book with total confidence. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. That's LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So you guys remember a week ago at this time, there was a ton of momentum, and I'm not saying they're out of it, but there was a ton of momentum for the Clemson Tigers, Dabo Swinney, in the recruitment of Miami legacy, four-star offensive lineman Canon Pickett, who we are huge fans of. The son of Booker Pickett Sr., younger brother of Booker Pickett Jr., who plays for the Miami Hurricanes right now. So he was on the same weekend visit to Clemson 2 weekends ago that actually led another Miami legacy, Grant Wise, to verbally commit to Clemson. And then Steve Wiltfong, among, I think, a few others probably from On3 Sports, logged an RPM prediction, the On3 version of a crystal ball, for Canon Pickett to pick Clemson. Now, we've talked a lot about that in the last week because, you know, Bruce Warner and I we're friendly with the Pickett family, and you know, we were told he's not decided yet. Let me emphasize that he's not decided yet one way or another. But in no way was he like about to pick Clemson, and it seemed to me all along like Miami is probably the favorite for Canon, who grew up loving Miami. And in fact, Pickett was down in South Florida. He lives in the Tampa area. He was down in South Florida for the big 5-on-5 event over the weekend, and he also had a chance to come down to Coral Gables, multi-day visit to the University of Miami. And now coming out of that Miami visit, the tide is turning here. And Steve Wiltfong, I guess the Fong bomb is not what it used to be, right? He's flipped his prediction from Clemson to the University of Miami for Canon Pickett. I mean, this one, we're a long ways away, folks, still from National Signing Day. We're, eight and a half months away from NSD in early December. So we have several hurdles to clear between now and when Canon can sign his name on the dotted line. But I have felt pretty good all along about where Miami stands. And, I'm sure he'll take his time probably into the summer before he makes a commitment somewhere. But I feel the Miami Hurricanes are and have been in the driver's seat, regardless of a good visit to Clemson. He just had a good visit to Miami, and the tide seems to be turning in favor of the Hurricanes. Miami also, by the way, earlier this week, hosted Jackson Cantwell, top offensive lineman, top overall player, in fact, in the class of 2026. Cantwell is a five-star number one recruit, standing 6'8", 300 plus pounds. By the way, Ryan Merritt was also at practice this week, who we're big fans of as well. South Ridge offensive lineman who hopefully Miami can keep building momentum for, because we like Merritt a lot. Obviously, everybody likes Jackson Cantwell a lot. Schools like Oregon and Mizzou are considered to be at the top of the list for him. He's from Missouri, so Mizzou certainly doesn't want to let him leave the state. But Cantwell had a really good visit to the U, and it wasn't just the football stuff. Of course, he appreciates, again, offensive line-driven program, the emphasis that Cristobal and Mirabal put into that group. But he also, I'm not sure what he's planning on majoring academically, but he did mention that Miami apparently has a really good program in his planned major. So he sees an academic fit at Miami as well. And Miami did something interesting with Jackson Cantwell that I don't hear a lot about this in recruiting at Miami or any other places. He also, Cantwell, was able to get some FaceTime with the University of Miami president. Joe Echeverria had apparently a personal meeting with Cantwell, which I think that's fantastic. Because first of all, Miami now has the type of university president. We haven't had a lot of these over the years that really knows football, loves football, and prioritizes football. So long before Joe was president, which was just made official several months ago, long before he was president of the U, Echeverria has been a forever fan and supporter of Miami athletics, especially football. So, and Cantwell mentioned like that was a first for him. I guess he's never gotten FaceTime with a university president or chancellor before. He mentioned this was the first time that Miami has done that. So I guess Mario Cristobal brought in the closer, right? If you need more people to convince Cantwell what a great place Miami is, have him meet with the university president. Again, I think this is unbelievable because when you have a president who is so aligned with sports, and I'm sure Joe emphasized that to Jackson, how much of a priority football and athletics are to Miami comes right from the top down, from the president's office to the coaches' offices, that was a good emphasis because, again, this is unique. I mean, Miami, if you guys know the history of Miami athletics, you know that even during Miami's most successful days in the 80s and 90s, they usually had to fight tooth and nail against the administration because the administration wasn't always working hand in hand with football. Now you've got alignment, like you have alignment from the top down. And I think that's a beautiful thing. And I think that's pretty cool. As far as standouts in Thursday's practice, some of the names that were mentioned by my guy, friend of the show, Gio Milian, who I think is going to join us again soon. Couldn't match our schedules today, but I think we'll get Gio back on Locked On Canes soon. Winners from the short media viewing period: Mark Fletcher, Gerard Pringle, JoJo Trader, Malachi Toney, Elijah Lofton, CeCe Mauinoa, Armando Blunt, Hayden Lowe, Justin Scott, Xavier Lucas were mentioned as players who were standouts today. And, of course, you expect Miami to have one of the better running back rooms in the country. Jordan Lyle is another one not mentioned there as one of the standouts today, but practices I've been to already this spring, I have seen Lyle standing out and looking really good. And Gerard Pringle has been a fast riser because remember, Pringle is the only new face in the running back room, so he's the true freshman kind of learning the ropes. But you talk about adapting quickly from going to just getting here to, second week being one of the standout guys is really impressive. JoJo Trader, I mean, we've talked about him since spring football started, has been consistently a top performer. He had a one-handed grab in practice on Thursday morning. Always has really productive one-on-one reps with defensive backs. He's been the toughest guy consistently to cover for the opposing DBs. Josiah Trader looks to me, and everyone else who's paying attention, looks to be a guy who's really going to take a big step forward in 2025. Went from a little bit of playing time last year because Miami had so many upperclassmen, top performers at receiver. The young guys didn't play that much last year, but Trader is going to have a lot on his plate coming up this season. And, hopefully another thing, because obviously Trader is out there making plays with the backup quarterbacks throwing him the football. I want to see that instant chemistry. Once Beck is ready to throw and fully participate, I want to see the quick chemistry developing with those two guys. Armando Blunt, again, is someone who we've heard and seen so much positivity about. Jason Taylor shouted him out today as someone who's going to be a really, really good player in big-time college football, and I think he's ready to take that jump this year. Blunt has been another one of those standouts so far in Miami practices. I know a name that wasn't mentioned there, but someone else that Jason Taylor shouted out today is Ruben Bain. I know Bain really wants to have his best year. This year was, affected by injuries last year as a sophomore heading into his third year. Jason Taylor mentioned, this is a guy that he never wants to leave the facility. Bain never wants to stop working out there, which is good because he's got to be a big-time leader in that room. And Hayden Lowe is someone on the edge that we've talked about. I know sometimes when you come in as a true freshman, it takes a little longer to kind of develop your body and get ready to play out there a lot of reps. Someone like, for example, Marquise Lightfoot, who came in a little bit light last year. Hayden Lowe looks ready to rock and roll immediately. He's 250 plus, 6'4", and he's winning a lot of reps out there in the IPF and at Greentree, which is great. Justin Scott, same thing, heading into his second year. But Scott is someone who's been getting a lot of meaningful reps and has been a really disruptive guy. Someone else who was shouted out today by Gabby Urrutia and Inside the U, I think this is really hopeful in terms of another true freshman. Defensive lineman Dante Simpson from Chaminade getting meaningful reps today on Miami's defensive line against some of the top offensive linemen. So Dante Simpson is someone, I think he's in the 280 range, first-year guy, was probably a little bit underrated coming out of high school last year. Maybe he's someone who's, trying to stake a claim to be in that defensive line rotation. If he's not in the rotation this year, to have him already getting meaningful reps as an early enrollee true freshman, it's a great sign for the future coming up. So Dante Simpson is another one to definitely keep an eye on. And both of the young tight ends we're hearing great and seeing great stuff about. Brock Schott and Luca Gilbert are both doing well. Gilbert, he's got that unreal length at 6'7". He's listed coming out of high school at around 233 pounds. He's already bigger than that, probably already bigger than that by now with a few months in the strength and conditioning room at college. So, Gilbert to me is someone to watch out for because he seems to have good hands and runs well, but he's also a really willing and excellent blocker. So those are some of the freshmen that are standing out so far. I want to talk on the other side about a clash of the past and the future. Former standout Miami Hurricanes starting quarterback getting together with a quarterback of the future and what it means at the U. You want to keep it locked right here, my friends. We're not done yet on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. You know how I keep going? I've just stepped off a cruise ship a couple of hours ago, and I'm loaded with energy thanks to our friends at 5 Hour Energy. Daylight savings snuck up on us again, guys. And if you're feeling that lost hour of sleep, 5 Hour Energy has your back. The extra sunshine means more time for fun, but sometimes you need a little boost to power through. Whether you're staying up late watching the NCAA tournament, we'll all be doing that, squeezing in a round of golf after work, or just trying to keep up with your busy day. 5 Hour Energy gives you that quick, refreshing pick-me-up whenever you need it. I've been staying up late watching all the tournament action, guys, and 5 Hour Energy helps me keep up the next day. Whether I'm at a game or I'm traveling, as I've just done, 5 Hour Energy is easy to grab and keeps me feeling refreshed. Head to 5hourenergy.com to find over 15 flavors to choose from, including watermelon, blue raspberry, and peach mango. You can even build your own 12-pack or 24-pack delivered right to your door. Need one now? Grab a 5-hour energy shot at your local grocery or convenience store. They're everywhere. Stock up today and stay energized.
The NCAA tournament is here, and so is the Bracket Breakdown.
Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup.
Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free.
It's your team every day.
And those guys do a great job. Andy Patton and Isaac Shade, they are my go-tos when it comes to college basketball news and info. And folks, keep in mind, we'll be talking later on tonight. Kenton Gibbs and myself are going to have a new Locked On ACC, a couple of ACC teams in action in the NCAA tournament today. We'll give you the recap tonight on Louisville and on Clemson, and taking a look, of course, at Duke and UNC as well. Locked On ACC is available free wherever you get your podcasts and available free on YouTube. Something I didn't realize how much I needed this in my life, but former standout Miami Hurricanes quarterback Cam Ward, who's, finishing up his pre-draft process, workouts, everything. He's going to be, he is in Miami now. He's going to be around for his pro day at the U coming up in a couple of days. Cam Ward working out with future Miami Hurricanes quarterback Dereon Coleman. And I didn't realize, again, how much I needed this workout in my life because, Dereon, obviously every two quarterbacks are a little bit different. No one's a carbon copy, but there are definitely some similarities with Coleman, with his arm talent, his mobility, his release. There are some similarities to Cam Ward, and the two of them actually got together earlier this week. Shout out to our guy, Balin Trujillo, Coleman's personal quarterbacks coach, for putting out some video on this. Ward and Dereon Coleman working out together. And first of all, obviously, Coleman can learn a lot from Cam Ward, and having him spend time with an alpha like that, someone he kind of wants to model his game after and his approach after, is really important. And Coleman, someone we've spoken a couple times to Mr. Trujillo on the show, and he's worked with some really good quarterbacks out there. He also works with Noah Grubbs, new Notre Dame quarterback, but he said it repeatedly that Dereon Coleman is the guy who's got the best arm talent of any quarterback he's ever worked with. And Trujillo's been working with Coleman since he was 10 years old. So they've been together with that coach-player mentorship partnership for about the past 8 years. And this is someone he's really helped mold and develop throughout the years. And the other thing that I love about Dereon Coleman is this young man is all about Miami and no one else. So again, we're 8.5 months away from National Signing Day. Coleman, class of 2026, 4-star quarterback, has repeatedly said he's not listening to other schools. He doesn't know why other schools keep calling him, despite the fact that he's not picking up the phone. And he's not taking any visits anywhere else other than Miami. He is completely locked in, and Coleman has shut down his recruitment. It is Miami or bust for Dereon Coleman. And folks, obviously, I don't disparage or judge high school players who approach it a different way, because sometimes when players, verbally commit, they still go through the process. They take other visits. Sometimes they even flip to other places. Sometimes they don't. I respect the guys who go through the process, but my goodness, do I have an extra layer of respect for the ones who decide very early on, I'm committing to this school, especially when it's Miami. I'm completely locked in and I'm not taking visits. And again, I don't judge the players who approach it differently. It's everyone's right to, it's your process. Recruiting is your process. Do it the way you want to do it, and I will respect you for it. But I think at the quarterback position, it's extra important to have somebody who locks in and shuts down their recruitment early on, because guess what? One of Miami's most important recruiters and closers for the next several months is going to be Dereon Coleman, right? Because no matter what position you play, especially if you're a wide receiver, of course, or an offensive lineman, but you want to know who your quarterback is going to be and who's the guy coming in with you at that position. And so to have that process, streamlined and shut down early. It sends a great message to the rest of the class of 2026 that I know Dereon is fully committed. Maybe I want to be fully committed. This is the guy I want throwing me passes at the next level. You can already start to build that chemistry even before you're done with high school. So I think it's great. It's especially important to me if you have a quarterback who locks in and shuts down their recruitment really early. That's going to be Coleman is going to become one of the best recruiters and one of the best closers the rest of the way for the University of Miami heading into National Signing Day 2026. Folks, we're not done yet today, by the way, on Locked On Canes. We're going to talk on an episode later. The truth teller is going to be with us, and we're going to talk with Dave Heffernan, a name that should be familiar to you. Played offensive line at Miami for Howard Schnellenberger and with Jim Kelly. Heffernan was part of that group, late 70s, early 80s, that laid the foundation for what would become one of the greatest dynasties in the history of college football, because Miami, between the years of 1983 and 2001, won 5 national championships, played for several others, revolutionized college football. And Dave Heffernan was one of those players who was part of the teams that laid down the foundations and the building blocks for those dynastic years. So Heffernan's going to join us later on today, folks. Tomorrow, we're going to be connecting with our guy, Marcus Benjamin. We're also going to be connecting with our guy, John Cafecito and Canes. I can't wait to talk to him because he does a fantastic job with his show. We're going to do a little crossover tomorrow. I think we'll also have an episode tomorrow with the Postcast King, Grease. So, for all the episodes I've missed over the past several days, in the next 36 hours, we're going to put out like enough episodes that you'll never even know I was gone. So make sure to smash that thumbs up button, like and subscribe to Locked On Canes on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your pods. And we'll talk to you again next time on another episode right here on the awesome Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.